A couple of days ago, I was in the search looking for a sports manga that could really leave me feeling stunned. That's when I found Ichika Bachika. This series is supposed to have around 50 chapters, but I could only find the first 4 translated. But when I read them, I thought that they were exactly the type of story that I enjoy. The characters were interesting. There is a deeper plot to the story. There seems to be a dope power system. And lastly, it's just really cool. So that's why I'm here today, to not gatekeep it, but instead to bring you guys along and explain the 4 first chapters of this really interesting basketball series. So get your snacks, and let's dive right into it. The text starts off by telling us that a coach was revered as a god in the world of high school basketball, and he was called nothing less than Shiragami Jinichi. The basketball club he founded at Oka Academy boasts an undefeated record, swiftly establishing Oka's era of absolute dominance, and yet a single rumor surrounded him. They say God had a son who vanished. With that, we get to real time, where some students are talking about it. Someone asks if they have heard about the son that vanished. The guy to his right says that it's a rumor that the coach had a secret son. The other agrees and explains that even the media reports and birth records are gone. They call it scary and ask if that isn't straight up horror movie stuff. However, we then meet Mameda Wakatsu, who is a second year at Oka Academy's high school division. In his head, he explains that they are talking about him and that he is the coach's son. The other continues as they say that someone like the child of God must live in a totally different world from them, explaining that he for sure has basketball shoes in some future model of Air Jordans or something. While they are talking, we can see Mameda walking past their room, but he suddenly stops when they ask about why he would disappear like that. Just then, when Mameda looks lost in thought, someone calls out to him. He looks back at them, and they ask him what he is spacing out for. Mameda looks back at them, and there we see that it was Oka Academy's 5th string, 2nd year, Aiwe Asaya. As Mameda looks at him and the guy behind him, he starts to look worried. On their faces, he can see that they are thinking that he is slow at his job. It seems that Aiwe is starting to get mad. But before he can say anything more, we see Mameda dashing forward and apologizing. After that, Aiwe is going to say that his water bottle is empty, but as he feels it, he can feel that it's full again. He then looks back at Mameda and says that he did it before he even said anything. The guy to his right adds on and asks if he is a mind reader or something. However, we then leave them and get to Mameda, who thinks that he saw it again and that they really hate him. He continues as he explains that he can see people's hostility, discontent, contempt, and disgust. They come in many forms, but they're all feelings that see him as an enemy, and because of that, he calls it hostility. Mameda says that this ability was born from the hostility his father directed at him. His father, Shiragami Jinichi, dominated the Japanese basketball scene and ushered in Oka's reign. They call him the god of basketball. As the son of someone so incredible, expectations naturally followed him wherever he went. However, he wasn't a prodigy, and people's expressions speak louder than words ever could. We then see him falling onto the floor and looking up at his father above him. There on his face, he can hear his father calling him a stain on the Shiragami name. Mameda thinks that his hatred was so pure that even a child could sense it. Ever since, having been constantly exposed to his father's hostility, he became hypersensitive to others' hostility as well, to the point where he began to see it as words. Basketball is completely off limits for him. It's like he's been erased from the entire basketball world under his father's watchful eye. He has been forced to work here as a manager, but at least he doesn't have to play basketball anymore, which was the source of all his self-loathing. But just then, as he is walking, he goes past the room with the basketballs. He looks around to see if anyone is watching before going inside, and thinks that if only he really thought like that, and how much easier his life would have been. He says that while looking directly at a pile of basketballs, he picks one up and smells it as he thinks that he loves the smell of them so much. Yeah, he is getting a bit strange here, not gonna lie. After that, he tries to bounce the ball up and down, but it hits his head, and he falls down to the floor with a bleeding nose. But even then, he seems to have a smile on his face. He then picks it up again, and says that he wonders what it feels like to receive a pass, to actually play with someone. Someday he just wants his dad to finally acknowledge him, and let him live freely. But while he is in his head, he can hear Aiwe screaming that the scoreboard's still not up. This makes him really freeze up as he admits that he forgot it. But then in an instant, he zooms out of the room and puts it up. We then move back to Aiwe, who screams at all of them that they, the 5th string, are the bottom of the barrel. There's nowhere to go but up, and they should train like their lives depend on it. But while they are training, we can see a little sneaky Mameda who is just looking up at them. Someone then speaks up and asks if anyone has an extra player to fill in over here, which obviously catches Mameda's attention. He starts to put his hand upwards, but then he thinks back to his father when he was a child, and with that, he quickly puts down his hand. And with that, we just see him being really sad and hiding behind the scoreboard while the others are playing. But while that goes on, we can see someone on the bleachers. I think that it's called that. Anyway, someone can be seen watching him. It's the Oka Academy's first string, second year, Aguro Hajime. Just then, someone calls out to him and says that he was here after all. We can see that it's none other than Junichi, who looks really manic while telling him to head back. Hajime just tells him that he found him way too quickly, but Junichi tells him that if it's someone important like him, then of course he would know where Hajime was. After that, Hajime keeps eyeing Mameda for a bit before Junichi tells him to stay away from that one. Hajime first asks him why, and asks if he isn't just a manager, but he later says, never mind. Hajime is silent for a while, before continuing and saying that he doesn't care anyway, and that he doesn't care for anyone on this team. With that, we then move to the Oka Academy High School Basketball Club and the first string gym, and right there we see an intense match going on, but we then move to the benches, where we see Mameda with the second string manager and the fourth string manager. The second string manager says that being able to keep records for the first string practice is talking about being lucky. The fourth string manager agrees with her. Meanwhile, Mameda is on the side and just looking like he is about to puke. In his head, he thinks that he really didn't want to be here, and he wonders why every first string manager is off today. But he then looks at a chair and explains that thankfully his dad is not here today. While in his head, the second string manager says that Hajime is here today. They continue and say that he's known for hating practice. We then learn a bit more about him, and it says that he is a genius point guard, standing at 182 centimeters tall. Despite only being a second year, he's already rumored to be the best in high school. Mameda is looking right at Hajime with a really stunned face, but he then starts to look a bit smug, as he thinks that he was on the cover of Monthly Basketball magazine 5 times last year. Even people in the 180 centimeter range look short when surrounded by guys over 190 centimeters. We then leave him and get back to the field. Here we see someone calling out to Hajime, and the height difference is kind of crazy. Anyway, he is called Nanai Hanachika, and is also a first string, but a first year. He tells Hajime that it has been a long time no see, and asks if he was dead or something, but he continues and tells him that he is so glad to be stuck as his caretaker today. Hajime, however, doesn't respond and just walks away. As Mameda sees this interaction, he explains that in last year's National Junior High Finals, Nanai made a total of 58 blocks and calls him a super rookie. Right after that, the second string manager says that besides Hajime, everyone else on his team is from the third string. The fourth string manager adds on that it's probably to keep things fair. After that, however, we see the game starting. We see the players from Hajime's team explaining that their defense is tight and they seem to be struggling. Just then, someone manages to get free, but right then and there, Nanai goes to him and looks like a giant trying to block him. The string managers explain that they're quick to cover. Far from being caught off guard, they cut off the offense before they can even react. The refined team coordination and speed are like a work of art, they call it. The player we saw trying to get free thinks that it was a trap and that they baited them to make a pass and then swarmed in with a double team. But even then, we have Nanai in his head, as he thinks that Hajime isn't going to fall for it that easily. Right after that, a player from his team screams at him for the ball, and after that another one does the same thing. Hajime, however, as he is bouncing the ball, he takes a deep breath and just says that it's so boring. Right then and there, he bounces the ball into the field, before then completely going past one of their players. His team can't believe it, as they say that he is going one-on-one. We also see him jumping right to the ring, but then in an instant we see Nanai coming right to him and closing the gap. Hajime, however, manages to dodge the block by going past it, and then scoring the point easily. The crowd is in pure shock that he dodged mid-air at 2 meters high and wonders how that is even possible. We also have Nanai, who looks angrily at Hajime and tells him that it has been ages, but that he is still this good, calling him seriously annoying. We then see his teammates who tells him that he could have totally passed. He then tries to lecture Hajime more and more, but Hajime just tells him to start making interesting plays. He looks back with a menacing look as he tells him that there's no way that he would pass to some mass-produced nobody with zero individuality. This obviously makes the teammates super mad, but Hajime just walks away. Mameda, back on the benches, looks really in awe, and the other managers says that he just breezed through Nanai's iron-walled blocks like it was nothing, but they then says that it's as expected after all, and that he's basically God's favorite. Hearing this seems to make Mameda clench his fist in anger, I would assume. We then move back to the 5th string gym, and everyone has pretty much left now. Well, everyone except for Mameda, of course. We see him having the ball in his hands, and he starts to run around the training cones. He thinks that genius doesn't even cut it. Hajime is in a whole other league. Even if he keeps pushing himself every day, will it ever be enough? He has a hopeful look on himself, but when he looks back, he can see that he has knocked over all of the training cones, and that makes him drop the ball in disappointment. While he looks at the ball on the ground, he can hear all of the hurtful words again, and of course, his father telling him that he is a stain on the Shirogami name. However, right after that, we move to Hajime, whom we can see walking around. He thinks that the 5th string gym is a good hiding spot. Just then, something catches his attention as he looks out at the field and he sees Mameda with the ball in his hand. With that, we also move back to Mameda, who, as he is looking around on the fallen training cones, thinks that he has seen this formation somewhere before. That's when he thinks back to the game and realizes that it's the same formation as the 1st string team's defense today. He thinks some more and explains that during the game, Hajime seemed extremely bored. He continues and wonders to himself that if it were him, how would he have moved back then? Before we get any more of that, however, we see Hajime again, who thinks that it's just the manager again. He wonders what he is planning to do with all those cones knocked over, but that's when he realizes the same thing that Mameda has done with the formation. But with that, we move back to Mameda, who seems really locked in. He starts to somehow visualize the players in front of him, but I'm a bit confused right here, since it seems like Hajime also is able to do it. Anyway, while looking at the player in front of him, he thinks that he can see the thoughts of the defender. He understands that the defense's feelings towards him are also hostility, and if they are aiming to steal the ball from the front, then he will just go behind. And with that, we see him making a very sick leap to the left, which Hajime even calls super quick. We continue to see Mameda rushing on the field as he thinks that he will dodge the defender, aiming to cut the pass and break free from the mark. Right when he does that, we get back to Hajime, who now has been able to visualize the ball in his hand. But just then, Mameda has gotten to the shadow of Nanai. He knows that a double team is coming. Because of that, he manages to utilize the gap to then break through, which he does easily. Hajime, who is still eyeing this down, notes that he cut straight through the opening before the double team even formed. He's already one step ahead before the defense can even react. Admitting that this goes way beyond agility, it's like he's predicting the future. With that in mind, he thinks that Mameda sure is interesting. Meanwhile, Mameda is just super happy that he did it. He sees the ring and thinks that he is completely free, so he calls out for the pass. But that's when he realizes that there is no one there, and that he was just alone. It also seems like that realization hits Hajime right at the same time. We can then see Mameda envision receiving the pass and shooting the ball, but as he lands, he thinks that he was just kidding, but that the rehearsal went perfectly. He looks down at his hand and says that if only someone would give him a pass, it would be awesome if the timing and eye contact synced up just right. Then maybe even his dad would finally acknowledge him. But while he is saying that, he can see his own vision getting blurry, and we then see a stream of tears coming off his face. But just then, someone calls out to him from behind. Mameda looks back, and he sees Hajime, who has got a ball, and he throws it towards him. Mameda looks at the pass and thinks that it's so graceful and a truly gentle pass, but as he goes to catch it, it seems to like hurt his hands. Hajime then goes to him and says that it's the first time he has ever seen someone fumble one of his passes, and he laughs at it. Mameda is so shocked that he falls to the floor, but Hajime just has a bright smile as he explains that he has found what gets him fired up, and Mameda is just in total disbelief. We then get some quick insight as the text explains that within the campus stands a towering basketball tower, where each floor is assigned to teams from the 1st string to the 5th string. The higher the team's rank, the higher the floor, and the better the facilities and coaching. However, the 5th string's gym is the only one located underground. It's the dumping ground for those deemed unworthy of Oka. They call it the kingdom's underground prison, and the person who wasn't even accepted into the 5th string is, of course, who we know it to be, Mameda, who instead became the manager, but who is now being stalked by the 1st string ace, as we see Hajime walking right behind him and asking Mameda when he will be done with what he is doing, continues and tells him to hurry up and for them to go and play already, asking Mameda if they aren't partners, which is something that Mameda isn't fully able to comprehend yet. Mameda, in his head, thinks that he is super scared. He continues and wonders if Hajime is mad about how he panicked and ran off yesterday, but while they are wondering, he thinks that he and Hajime seem to be around the same height. Just as he thinks that Hajime speaks out and says that Mameda without a doubt just thought that he was short right now, Mameda tries to defend himself by telling him that he wasn't doing that at all. Right after that, we see an article where it said that Hajime was actually 182 centimeters tall. However, Hajime himself explained that it was because he was scrolling through the player registration form online, and I guess accidentally put it in. Meanwhile, Mameda just wonders to himself if that is even allowed. Mameda then gets back to his senses as he asks Hajime why in the world he is even here, asking if the 1st string players isn't supposed to be in the middle of practice right now. Hajime, obviously, as always, just tells Mameda that they are partners, so they should stick together. Mameda looks annoyed and asks him when exactly they became partners, but Hajime tells him straight up that if he says that Mameda is his partner, then he is his partner. He continues with the questions and asks Mameda why he is stuck being the 5th string manager, asking him how he managed to read the defense like that yesterday, and of course, why he isn't playing basketball. Hajime is supposed to say something more, when suddenly Mameda speaks up. He tells Hajime that he isn't allowed to play basketball. Hajime doesn't buy that for a second, as he tells him that he literally was playing basketball yesterday. Mameda tries to tell him that he wasn't, but Hajime calls him a liar. Mameda seems worried, but decides to continue as he tells Hajime that someone has banned him from playing basketball for a long time because he sucked at it. Mameda says that he was so scared of that person that he started reading their emotions all the time. Eventually, he ended up being able to see people's feelings, and it's only the negative emotions that are so carefully shown to him. Mameda explains that it was probably how he read the defense yesterday. That's why he isn't the kind of person that Hajime is looking for. While he is going to explain some more stuff, it's now Hajime who cuts him off. He asks if the scary person that he is talking about is none other than Shirogami Jinichi, asking if he isn't spot on. Mameda seems extremely confused and just seems to freeze up. He asks Hajime how he could know, but Hajime tells him that Jinichi told him before. He told Hajime to stay away from Mameda. Hajime continues to dig into it as he asks Mameda what he is to Jinichi. But while he is talking, Mameda is inside of his head. He wonders if he figured it out, or if it was something that he said or did. And even with all of that, he can still see his dad so clearly in front of him. Mameda then speaks up and tells Hajime that if the coach told him that, then maybe he should listen to him. In fact, Mameda himself would like to ask Hajime for the same thing. Hajime tries to then call out for Mameda, but it's too late as Mameda starts to run off, saying that he has got manager duties to take care of, and then leaves Hajime all alone. We then move back to Mameda, who has gotten a bit away. He takes a deep breath while thinking that hopefully Hajime gave up by now, but even then he thinks back to Hajime saying that they were partners. It goes silent in Mameda's mind as he then thinks that Hajime must have been obviously just joking with him. Mameda then thinks back to himself holding the basketball and wishing for someone to be playing alongside him, but he then thinks that there's no way someone who'd be on his side actually exists, which is actually so sad. But after that, he seems to be thinking of something else as he looks at the cones, which makes his mind start to get active, as he then goes completely blank. He starts to run downstairs and barrages into the gym and apologizes to everyone since, well, he forgot to put the cones back from yesterday, but while he is trying to apologize, he can see all of their angry expressions on their faces, and that makes his own mind go blank. We then move to Aiwe, who goes forward to him. He asks if it was Mameda, the last person in the gym yesterday. Mameda tries to say something, but Aiwe continues as he explains that the lights weren't turned off and the doors weren't locked. Because of that, they are now suspended from practice for 2 weeks, and the assistant coach just spat that out earlier. As Mameda looks at his face, he can see the words saying that it was all his fault being printed right on Aiwe's face. Meanwhile, Aiwe screams at him and asks him how he is going to take responsibility for it. He continues to go off on Mameda by telling him that they are already treated like garbage down here to begin with, asking if the higher-ups would hesitate to throw people like them away. As they get more and more angry towards Mameda, he can do nothing, as it's all so overwhelming. He starts to drop his stuff while thinking that the room is overflowing with hostility, all aimed at him. He thinks that the idea of someone being on his side is a total joke, and that for someone like him, no one will come and help. But just then, a basketball comes flying right by all of them. We then see someone calling them bastards, and asking what they are doing to his partner. It's obviously Hajime, who looks at them with a cold and mean expression. Hajime goes to Mameda and asks him what he has been so scared of this whole time, asking if it is these guys or maybe his father. However, Mameda just asks Hajime if the coach didn't already tell him to stay away from Mameda, but he quickly gets interrupted as Hajime looks right at him while explaining that his partner is him. With that, he asks Mameda to tell him, asking if there is anything else in this world that still scares him. Mameda looks back at Hajime with tears in his eyes when he suddenly realizes that he can see no hostility on Hajime's face, which makes him start to think that it's what he has been searching for this whole time. While in his thoughts, Hajime tells everyone there that this is perfect and that the other guys will be their opponents, which leaves Mameda speechless. Anyway, Hajime continues as he says that there are only 2 of them, and because of that, 5 of them should be enough, which is such an aura thing to say. However, Aiwe gets a bit annoyed by that as he tells Hajime not to go deciding things on his own, saying that they are still figuring out how to make this guy take responsibility for what he did. But as Hajime hears that, he cuts him off, telling Aiwe that the court wasn't even mopped properly after practice, telling him that they probably dumped the entire cleanup job on him and that the one shifting the blame is just as responsible. On top of all of that, he says that the truth is that he was the last one to leave here though. But right after that, Mameda gets up and tells Hajime that he never said that he was going to play basketball. Hajime looks at him and asks if he is still scared, saying that his partner is him and that other details are omitted. But Mameda just tells him to put some care into his catchphrases. But then Hajime tells him that he will be giving him a pass and asks Mameda if he has got a problem with that. But it seems like he doesn't, as we start to get into the game. Aiwei gives Hajime the ball and tells him that he gave him all of that lecture earlier, and to not go regretting it later. Right then, we see like 3 players swarm around Hajime. Aiwei in his head thinks that he has no idea what he is thinking, but his only teammates is Mameda. After all, if they take Hajime out, then they have basically won. But we then learn that Hajime knows that it's what Aiwei is thinking, which shocks him. But with that, he tells Aiwei to just watch since Mameda sure is interesting. And with that we move to Mameda, who opens his eyes extremely wide, and just then he can see what the others in front of him are thinking. He thinks that they are not on the same page, and that unlike the first string players, they're not coordinated. With that in mind, he signals to Hajime that he wants the ball. This makes one of them rush forward, and he ends up running into his own teammate, and with that, Mameda knows that this is his chance. As we can then see him leaping between them in an instant, Aiwei then looks back and notes that it's like Mameda knew that those two were going to crash into each other. But while thinking that he can feel the ball being launched right past him and going towards Mameda, Mameda looks at the ball and he then thinks about all of this time being the manager and always cleaning up. But right after that, we see him with a smile on himself as he manages to grab the ball in his hand. Hajime also gets a smug smile as he sees that and calls it the best. Meanwhile, the other players start to panic as Mameda goes for the layup. However, instead of seeing what happens, we see a sad Mameda. Hajime goes to him and asks what the big deal is, and that he just missed a wide open layup. Mameda is still embarrassed and tells Hajime that he doesn't need to say it like that. We then move into Mameda's thoughts as he thinks that in the end he missed the shot, and after that, Hajime pretty much crushed all 5 players single-handedly. Right after that, however, we see Aiwei going to Mameda. He apologizes about what he said and for everything up until now, explaining that he kind of dumped a lot on him. Mameda tries to say that it was fine and that he is the manager after all. But Aiwei then continues as he tells Mameda that if he could play basketball, then he should have said so, telling him that he could have filled in when they were short on players. After that, more of the players go forward and tell Mameda that he was super fast, asking him how he could pull that off and if he predicted it. Hajime, on the side, just smiles as he sees it before getting down to him and asking how his pass was. Mameda looks down at his hands and explains that his hands are still tingling, saying that for some reason he doesn't really remember it clearly, but the moment he broke past the defenders, the ball just landed right into his hands in a flash. It felt so hot it made his hand go numb, but even then he had a big bright smile on himself. However, just then, someone came by screaming at the 5th string players and asking them what they were doing and stating that they were supposed to be suspended from playing. But behind them, we also saw none other than Jinichi entering the gym. Aiwei looks nervous as he sees him and explains that he's never even bothered to come down and see the 5th string before. But Jinichi comes in with a bang as he tells them that starting today, all members of the 5th string are expelled from the club, which leaves all of them in awe, mostly Mameda, who can't believe it. Mameda starts to think right away that it's his fault. Jinichi starts to talk forward, and Mameda knows that he is coming this way. He starts to wonder about what he should do, as after all, this is all his fault. He tells his body to move over and over again, but in the end, Jinichi walks right past him. Mameda, in his head, thinks back to his trauma with his father, and explains that the fear has piled up, and that it has managed to freeze him in place. Jinichi later walks towards Hajime and tells him to head back, but Hajime, with all of the confidence in the world, tells him no. He looks at Jinichi and explains that he has retired from the 1st string and that he is done being his puppet. He starts to get more and more intense as he tells Jinichi to play a game, saying that the 5th string players and he will face off once a week against every team from the 4th string to the 1st. Hajime then points towards Mameda and explains that he will also be playing, which leaves him in total awe. Anyhow, Hajime continues. He tells Jinichi that if they win against them all, then they win the game, but if they lose even once, then it's game over for them. And if that happens, then Hajime will grant Jinichi his wish. The 5th string will disband, and he will never disobey Jinichi again. But that's not all, as if they, on the other hand, were to win, then Jinichi would have to grant him 3 of his wishes. He then steps right towards Jinichi and tells him straight up that they are going to destroy him. Hajime then peeks out of Jinichi's way as he looks over to Mameda and asks him if he is right. However, Mameda is unsure. He thinks that going against his dad is just impossible. He couldn't even move a single muscle earlier, thinking that he should just keep going like always, even if it's miserable, even if he is alone. But just as he says that line, he can then once again visualize the basketball in his hand, and he thinks that there's no way. But right after that, he is once again sent straight into despair as he continues to think about Junichi's harsh words. But even though he seems to be doubting himself more and more, he then thinks of Hajime once again. With all of that out of the way, Mameda then bows towards Junichi and screams that he wants to destroy him and even asks him for permission, which leaves all of the other players around them super lost and confused. After that, in a nanosecond, Mameda starts to panic inside of his head. He asks himself what it is that he has done, and he's even too scared to even look up. Not long after, however, Junichi speaks up and tells him, "Fine," explaining that it's a request from a valuable player and that he doesn't mind it. But even then, he tells Hajime that adults don't play around like that. He looks coldly towards him while saying that under these conditions, the only thinking working in his favor is Hajime himself. Hajime just smiles as he says that Junichi got him, but even then, Junichi tells him that it's fine and that he will listen to his 3 requests. Well, that is if he manages to win, of course. But if he loses, then that also means that Hajime will be his forever. And Hajime tells him that it's a deal instantly. But after that, Junichi starts to walk away, and Mameda manages to see his face, which has a huge grin on it. We then cut ahead and go to the 4th string gym. Here we see some people telling Hajime that he went and ran his mouth the whole time, and not to drag them into it. But Hajime argues that they seem to be totally into it, as we can see them with face masks on. Aiue right away tries to argue by telling Hajime that he is the one who stands out the most and that he needs to cover his face. We then also see Mameda behind a paper bag, and Hajime asks him what is wrong and if he is feeling nervous again. However, Mameda in his head thinks that it's the first time that he has seen his dad make that kind of face. But we then leave him for a bit as Hajime speaks out and tells them that there's no point in scouting those 4th string guys anyway. But Yako tries to remind him that those guys are above them, the 5th string, not Hajime, of course. Yako continues as he says that in their case, knowing the coach, he won't show them any mercy, not even an ounce. In fact, he will probably do the completely opposite, telling them that it's going to be like a warning. By letting the 5th string get completely crushed by the others, he's trying to use their humiliation as fuel to push them to get stronger, saying that it's what the coach is aiming for. While all of them look somewhat crushed, Hajime ensures them that it's fine, telling them with a smile that it just means more people will get to see the look on their faces when they wreck them. This seems to make both Yako and Aiue super hyped, as they say that they have got it, and that's when Hajime says that they kind of have no choice, because if they lose, then they are done for. After that, we finally move to the basketball tower and the 1st floor in the 4th string gym. Aiue speaks out and says that the other team's gyms are unnecessarily spacious. Yako adds on that he wonders where they are even getting the funds from. Yako then says that this reminds him, asking Mameda if this isn't his first time in the 4th string gym, as he missed last year's cross-team exhibition match because he had a cold. Mameda says that he is right with a weird tone, as he then in his head thinks that actually he was scared of running into dad, but that he can't tell them that he was faking it. But even then, this time he looks super ready, as he thinks that he isn't running away anymore. Right after that, Aiue says that they are doing a practice match and asks who they are up against. But just then, someone tells him that they are up against last year's university champions. As Hajime looks at them getting ready, he explains that the physical gap is brutal. Mameda adds on that they are university students after all. With that, he thinks that he has seen the 1st string play on TV a lot, but he wonders just how the 4th string will play. But he doesn't need to wait long to see it, as we see the match starting, and the 4th string is going ham. Even Yako explains that the 4th string is completely destroying the university students. The girl from earlier then adds on that in the center is their rising star, power forward Hattori. He's second to none in terms of physicality, which we later see as he goes, and completely bodies 2 players and manages to score a dunk. He isn't only good on offense either, as we see him defending with his strong build, or his muscle defense, which he calls it. Hattori then manages to get the ball and uses his muscle hustle, which is basically throwing a pass, but the pass is so strong that his teammate isn't able to catch it. The ball goes outside, and they tell him that he needs to calm himself down. Mameda from the spectating area says that intercepting that ball would destroy your hand. Aiue also wonders just how fast he is throwing it, and that it's a basketball and not a baseball. Meanwhile, Hajime tells them that it doesn't matter how fast it's going if no one can catch it, continuing and saying that if he's their star, then they are a pretty dumb team. But just then, we move back to Yako, who tells him that he was their star player until last year. That's when it all changed, and that this year, that heap of muscle gained a brain. With that, we then get right to that brain that is called Ain Shuta. Yako tells them all that he is known as the inhuman brain that completely controls all of their thoughts and actions. Mameda seems really hyped by this. Meanwhile, Hajime just calls him short, so Yako has to get him back on Earth by telling him that he is taller than what Hajime is. Mameda then says that if he were also 2 meters tall, then they would be totally unstoppable. After that, I'm not sure who is talking, but I'm guessing that it has to be Yako, since they say that there isn't an opponent you should feel comfortable playing against, as we are then going to understand just why Ain is called the Inhuman. As we move back into the game, we see the university players getting impatient, and one of them says that it's impossible to get past these giants, and that he will make them think that he is going for a center. He sees his teammates to the left, but just as the ball gets passed, we see player number 4 from the 4th string, who just smacks the ball down to the ground, and Ain is the one who manages to get and grab the ball. Mameda, in an instant, screams out that the block came out faster than the shot, and that it was like he knew it was going to happen. Aiwei also adds that Ain gave him a signal just then, and with that, Yako finally reveals to them that he has an IQ of over 200. Hundreds of millions of play patterns have been inputted into his brain. From the positions, directions, and behavior of the players, he calculates the play with the highest likelihood of occurring. Just then, in the game, we see that Ain suddenly slowed down. One of the university players thinks that he is lucky and that he can intercept it. However, instead, Ain throws the ball backwards as Yako finishes his sentence by explaining that Ain can see into the future perfectly. We then see that the ball that he threw back, well, it went to Hattori, who just makes an awesome dunk. Mameda looks scared by all of this, as he notes that the defense was right on his tail. Hattori managed to sprint behind them, and nobody saw what he was doing. Aiwei adds on to that by saying that a team of muscle monsters controlled by a brain that can see the future is a real hive mind. We then skip to after the game, where Hattori explains that his muscles are incredible today, but Ain just tells him that he forgot what he told him to do. He asks Hattori what that pass he did earlier was, asking if his skull is filled with muscles too, but as he says that, we see Hattori getting closer and closer to him, but in the end it was all to ask if Ain had gotten a new haircut or not. After some talking, Hattori tells Ain that they have a mixed game with the 5th string next Friday. Ain tells him that he heard about it, and asks if it's true that Hajime really joined the 5th string. He continues to think and says that Hajime is shorter than him and that he needs to kill him quickly. Hattori is a bit confused, so he asks Ain if Hajime is his friend. However, Ain just tells him that he's caught his attention recently, hanging out in the 5th string gym, and that it seems like he's found something new to play with. With that, he asks Ain if Hajime randomly showed up and asked to play a match. Would Ain accept it? Just then, as he says it, we see Hajime coming to them while holding Mameda by his hoodie. Hajime asks them if they can play them, and Hattori is just in awe that he actually showed up. Ain seems to just be silent for a second as he looks at both of them. He also sees Mameda and knows that he is also shorter than him and wonders if this could be Hajime's new toy. While that goes on, we see Hattori and Hajime and Mameda getting in a bit of an argument, but that's when Ain throws him the ball and tells him the words power. He also looks extremely creepy while looking right at Hattori. Hattori in his head takes all of this, as he has been told to hurl the ball right at Hajime with full power, so he starts to go for it, but before he can slam Hajime in the face with the ball, we see that Mameda has already managed to sneakily take the ball away from Hattori. Hattori just looks super stunned. Meanwhile, Hajime smiles and thinks that he read it. However, Ain has some other thoughts, as in his head he just repeats the words, die, kind of like Rin, to be honest. Anyway, back to Mameda, who screams that basketballs aren't for throwing at people, and Hajime just asks if he is seriously lecturing right now. But right after that, we move back towards Ain, who thinks that Mameda stopped the ball. He thought that he would be able to hit them both at once. However, Mameda saw his face and noticed something. The look on his face, his emotion, his instinct to kill, and his hostile thoughts. With that, he realizes that he can read people's hostility, and on top of all that, Ain says that he is shorter than what he is, and because of that, he looks super determined while thinking that he is going to kill him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was sadly all that we have. It truly feels bittersweet leaving it off right here, but I seriously can't find any more translated chapters like anywhere. If you know where to look, then please let me know, but if not, then please let me know down below what you thought of this video, and if you liked me talking about other sports series than Blue Lock, and if you did enjoy that, then please let me know what the next series you would like me to talk about is. But with that, I want to wish you guys an awesome weekend or day if you are watching this video another day, and yeah, peace out.